So as Tim says, we are thinking about invitation today. We really believe this is something that God's placed on our heart for this year. We're calling it the year of invitation. We kicked it off January the 3rd, and we were like, yes, year of invitation, vaccines coming, COVID will be over soon. And then like the next day, lockdown 3 came. But it's still the year of invitation. And the awesome thing about, I guess, a pandemic in these days is actually the invitation has never been easier. It's so easy to invite friends to Alpha, so easy to invite friends along to church, and so on. So I want us to talk today about how we can be people who change other people's lives. How we can be people who change other people's lives. And I think there's a key phrase that's just come to my mind recently, and I feel like this is really the key to being not just a church that's invitational, but people who like just carry this invitational, attractive spirit. And the phrase is this: live from the overflow. Live from the overflow. Because the thing is, friends, when you're living from the overflow, inviting people to Alpha isn't a chore. It's just something you want to do. If you're pumped about something, you're going to talk about it. And you're going to be like, come and check it out. So sometimes when we think about inviting our friends to Alpha or to church, it can feel like this really heavy thing. Like it's something that we have to do, this joyless, thankless task that is just part and parcel of being a Christian, but it's not like that. If you love something, you share that with other people. You want to tell other people about it. So I want to begin by just imagining. Imagine someone who's like your best friend, or perhaps a colleague, or somebody in your neighborhood, a neighbor or whatever, and imagine them 3 months from now, 6 months or a year or whatever, sometime in the future. Imagine them saying to you, thank you so much for what you did. It's changed my life. Thank you so much for what you did for me. It's changed my life. And just imagine, you might just have 3 or 4 people in your mind who are really on your heart, who you'd love to see their lives changed, impacted, transformed. Just imagine that. Where would you be? What would be the context? Would you be sat at home? Would they drop you a text? Would it be a few months' time in a coffee shop and they're sat down with you and they're looking back and they're saying, thanks so much for what you did. It changed my life. Because that is possible. That doesn't just have to be an idea. That is something that can be a reality. But I think we suffer from a bit of a problem. And our problem is that we fail to connect what we do in the here and now with what can be in the future. We fail to connect the actions we can make today with the difference they can make in the future. I mean, we all know this logically. We all know that we are, the sort of byproduct of our choices. Our daily choices and habits will become who we are long term. Or like growing up for a child, the choices that are made for them often shape who they become in the future. We all know that. But so often we forget it. That actually very small actions, very small invitations, very small kind of gestures and ways of living today can make a massive impact in the future. And it all starts when we begin to live from the overflow. That's the idea. So I want us to pick up a story, and I want to introduce you to a character Jesus met in the Gospel of John. So it's John chapter 4, and there's a character called the woman at the well. It's a lady Jesus meets. So what do we know about her? Well, we know that she's from a place called Samaria. And Jesus' people, the Jews, they do not like the Samaritans. They're just like, they don't get on very well at all. Just try and imagine like England and Scotland, or England and Wales, or England and Ireland, or England and France, or England and Australia. Basically, England, any other country. Just imagine that kind of hostility that exists between those two groups. And you kind of get a flavor for the animosity and the hostility that there is between these two groups, the Samaritans and the Jews. So Jesus he was on a journey, a fairly normal journey, but he had to take a bit of a detour, and he ends up in Samaria. He ends up sat by a well. It's the middle of the day. It's a boiling hot day in the Middle East, and a woman comes with a jar to draw water from the well. Jesus has like an interaction with her. He talks to her. The disciples are not there. They've gone off to buy some food, It's been a bit of a road trip, gone to get some munchies, things like that, So it's Jesus on his own at the well with this woman. And what else do we know about her? We know that she's got a bit of a sketchy background. She's had 5 husbands, and the man that she's currently with is not her husband. So she's kind of a bit of an outcast in this society. She's drawing water from the well at the hottest time of the day. Why? Because she doesn't want to be seen. Like, very few people are getting water from a well at the hottest time of the day. So we can assume she's carrying quite a lot of shame, quite a lot of, embarrassment or guilt on her shoulders. Not wanting to be seen, not wanting to be known, wanting to be hidden, wanting to be concealed. And Jesus meets her at the well, and he says, will you give me a drink of water? We'll pick up the story here. It's in John chapter 4, and we're going to begin reading from verse 7. It says, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, you were a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. So we'll stop the story there for just a second. Here's the first thing I want you to notice. If we're going to live from the overflow, we need to recognize that people are thirsty. Like, if we're living from the overflow and we've got something to offer, we need to recognize that people want what we have to give. Jesus is a person who invites us to receive living water. He says, come to me. I am the living water. So there's this woman who's on the outskirts of society. She's a bit of an outcast from her society. And Jesus says to her, you're getting a physical drink there with the jar and stuff. But actually, if you knew who was here, you would be asking them for living water. And we need to understand that everybody has this thirst. You know it, I know it. There's times at your life when you will know it more acutely than you know it now. But we know in our souls that there's a thirst. We know whether it's when we're lying awake at like 2 a.m. with heartburn or something like that, or whether it's when we go through a crisis moment, or even just at the most random times, we know that feeling that there's just something that's missing. When I first became a Christian, I used to call it like the sort of God-shaped hole, the donut, like the O in the donut. It was just like when I became a Christian, when I came to Jesus, it was just like this woman. It was knowing that there was something wrong. There was something missing. There was something not right. And when I met this person, Jesus, it was a realization and a revelation that he was that answer to the problem that I had in my heart. And of course, it's a battle. It's not just like a one-time thing, boom, all done and dusted. There's a journey, there's a process. And you may have been following Jesus for many years and still have big struggles, as I do. And it's a journey. But there's a realization, isn't there? And we see it in this passage, this woman's story. There's a thirst there. So my encouragement to you is, particularly when you're thinking about invitation, being a person of invitation, we can often be put off by thinking that our friends, families, neighbors, colleagues have everything together, because their Insta reels basically cover over the fact that there is a deep hole and gap in their life. We all have a deep need for living water, and that's the first thing we see. And then we see, as we move on in the story, verse 25, we see the woman's epiphany moment. Verse 25. This woman said to Jesus, I know that the Messiah, called Christ, is coming, and when he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, am he. And that's the sort of mic drop moment. That is the boom moment. She has this interaction with Jesus that starts off about water, and Jesus says to her, look, I can offer you something beyond your physical needs. I can give you living water, water that will not run dry. And she kind of grapples with this. They have a little back and forth conversation. And she's like, wait a minute. I've heard that in the future there's going to be somebody coming called the Messiah, like God's chosen king. And Jesus is basically like, yeah, you're talking to him. So it's like mega epiphany moment. And I find this so interesting. What does she do? Verse 27. The first thing she does, Jesus says, yeah, I'm the Messiah. Verse 27. Just then, his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. But nobody asked him, what do you want? Or why are you talking with her? This is it. And then leaving her water jar, so she leaves like the thing she came to do, a physical like act of getting the water. She leaves that behind. And then she goes back to the town. This is verse 28. Goes back to the town and says to the people, verse 29, come and see a man who told me everything I've ever done. Could this be the Messiah? I don't think she's got everything like sorted in her mind about Jesus. I don't think she understands everything that there is to know about Jesus. But that didn't stop her from going to tell other people about Jesus. And this is always the pattern in Scripture. People encounter the person of Jesus, and then they go and tell. Sometimes, if you've been around church for a while, and you're thinking about sharing your faith in Jesus, it can feel like this really heavy thing, like you need to kind of do a theology degree, or have some kind of special certificate, so now you can go and tell people about Jesus. From this passage, that's not what it looks like. This just looks like a woman who met Jesus, was so impacted by Jesus that she went to tell her friends about Jesus. As far as I can read in this passage, she had no qualification to do that. As far as I can read in this passage, she also felt no compulsion to do that. You see, what she was doing was living from the overflow. She had just encountered living water in Jesus. And she had then gone out of the overflow of her heart to tell everybody in the town. Now, we don't know for sure, but we feel like she's quite an outcast in this society. She's trying to avoid people. So she goes from that to actually telling everybody about this person, Jesus. And the ripple effect is absolutely massive. As we go along in the passage, what you see is the town coming to Jesus. And as we get further on in the passage, you see the people from the town coming to Jesus and saying, now we believe. Not just because of the woman's testimony, but because we've seen Jesus for ourselves. That's what it looks like when we live from the overflow. Often we can make excuses about why it's not a good idea for us to share our faith with other people. Sometimes we think, it's not for me. Sometimes we can say, actually, there are some people who are gifted to share their faith, and I bless them. They can get on and share their faith on my behalf and everybody else's behalf. That's not my gifting. They can do it. Sometimes we can think a little bit like that. Sometimes we can also think, I'm not exactly sure where I am in my walk with Jesus. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet. I'm not sure I understand everything. This passage is really interesting because I don't think this woman was quite there yet either. Yet she went to her whole town and told everybody about Jesus. I think sometimes we can disqualify ourselves as if we're not somebody who does that kind of thing. But if you're somebody who talks about what you love, then you are that sort of person. If you're somebody who talks about things that you're pumped about, you're excited about, then you're that kind of person. We talk about what we love. I've got so many things that I'm interested in, like Bradford Bulls, rugby. I like a bit of football, particularly if it's the World Cup. There's things that I'm passionate about, and I've got no problem talking about them with anyone and everyone. And how much more should it be like that with our faith in Jesus? We want to live our lives out of the overflow, just to be so just in kind of a strong relationship with Jesus that actually all we can do is go and tell other people about it. So that's what it looks like to live from the overflow. And I think this is so key when it comes to invitation, because we want to be those people who do, like this lady in this passage, who go to other people and say, look, come. That's why when it comes to Alpha, we put such a big emphasis on making it the best event ever. And we've got a theology for that. Sometimes we face a little bit of stick because it looks a bit like, oh, you guys just kind of putting on this slick event. And you try to be like the cool church, the hipster church, or something like that, as if that's really a thing. The reason we place such a high value and a high emphasis on Alpha and doing it to the best of our abilities is because we want to reflect something of God's welcome to people when they come home. I don't know if you know the story of the prodigal son, but when the son ran away from his father and then came back, the father didn't just put on a sort of bit of soup and bread and pat him on the back and say, welcome back, son. He threw a big extravagant party. He threw a big, his arms open wide. He ran to the son. He embraced him. He kissed him. He gave him a ring. He gave him sandals. He gave him a robe. He gave him a big extravagant party because he'd come home. So when we do Alpha and we do it big, it's because we want to reflect something of the kingdom and the Father's invitation to people in Preston, to your friends, to your family. So as we think about that, as we think about this year of invitation, my encouragement to you is to live from the overflow. If you've got any of that kind of guilt or that heaviness on your shoulders about sharing your faith, about inviting others to church or to Alpha or whatever, I want to just say, get rid of that. That is not from the Lord. Let this year, 2021, be the year you live from the overflow, where you just pursue a radical relationship with God. You want to be somebody who invites loads of people to church and see friends, family, neighbors, colleagues, lives transformed for eternity? Then just pursue a radical relationship with God. Live from the overflow of the one who can offer living water to those people that are on your hearts. Live from the overflow, from the one who can give free and abundant life to you, to your friends, and your family. And this is the life that Jesus has won for us. This is the cross life. Jesus laid down his life on the cross. He lived a life of overflow. Like, if you were walking with Jesus, you would know about it. Like he went around, he healed people, he taught people, he loved the sick and the outcast and the lonely. He made broken people whole. He made blind people see. He provided food for people. He lived a life of overflow. And on the cross, he laid down his life on the cross. He died. He stood in your place and my place so that the floodgates of heaven could flow through him to you. And as they flow to you, they flow to others. As you invite, as you bring people. The cross is the extravagant love of God being poured into your hearts by the Holy Spirit. And friends, it's as we get that, it's as we have that encounter, as we're impacted, as we're transformed by Jesus, that we can go overflow and reach out, transform the lives of our friends, family, colleagues, and so on. So that's my encouragement to you as we head into this year, to live lives of overflow that invite others just to come and to see and to encounter this person of Jesus.